Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Leslie Thomas attacked Ted Richardson after Ted's own daughter exposed the dark secrets she's been hiding. Secrets that tie her irrevocably to the near-fatal car crash of Laura Peterson and the clandestine potassium injection that left the young woman fighting for her life. The late afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the Richardson estate. Inside the grand foyer, Ted Richardson stood rigid, breathing heavily, as Kat, his daughter from a previous marriage, cut through the air with words that felt like shards of glass. She'd come to him that morning with trembling urgency, clutching printed news reports and fragmentary witness statements. "Dad," she had insisted, eyes blazing, "Leslie was behind Laura's accident, and she sabotaged that bag." Now, as he stood before Leslie, all the years of friendship and trust warring inside him threatened to collapse. Leslie Thomas, esteemed physician, pillar of the community, stood on the opposite side of the marble floor. Her cheeks were flushed, not from the evening heat, but from anger and fear. She wore her professional composure like armor, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Ted, you can't believe everything Kat says. There's no proof." His voice was low, measured by a grief-stricken resolve. "I love you, Leslie, you know that. We vowed to face everything together. But if what Kat discovered is true, I can't pretend I don't see it. I can't cover for you when an innocent woman nearly died." Leslie's pupils dilated. "You'd turn me in?" Her words were barely more than a whisper, but they rang through the foyer like the chime of a funeral bell. He nodded. "I'm going to the police after this conversation. I'm sorry, but I have to do what's right for Laura and for Kat." Her composure snapped. Panic-fueled desperation drove her forward. Her hand shot out, fingers curled into a fist, and before Ted could react, she struck him across the cheek with the back of her hand. The slap echoed in the cavernous room. Ted reeled, pain blossoming across his face. Leslie's eyes flickered with horror at her own act, but the moment had passed. She yanked at the door handle and fled into the gathering dusk, leaving Ted against the wall, slumping to the floor. Kat's shriek split the silence as she entered the foyer and froze at the threshold. The sight of her father crumpled, a dark stain spreading across his dress shirt, sent adrenaline surging through her veins. She rushed to his side, voice trembling. "Dad, Dad, wake up." But he lay still, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Realizing the gravity of the scene, Kat pulled out her phone with a shaking hand and dialed Jacob Hawthorne, Leslie's brother-in-law and respected county prosecutor. "Jacob," she gasped, "you have to help me find her. Find Leslie. She attacked Dad." And as she spoke, one dread-filled thought pulsed through her mind. If Leslie wasn't stopped, she might strike again. The hush of night had settled over Baltimore by the time Jacob Hawthorne's cruiser rolled up the Richardson driveway. Kat met him under the porch light, her face streaked with tears and resolve. Jacob's brow furrowed as he knelt by Ted's side. He felt for a pulse, found it steady though weak, and gently lifted Ted's head into his lap. Outside, the hum of distant traffic provided an ironic lullaby to the drama unfolding within the grand mansion. Kat recounted events in clipped sentences, her voice steadier now that action was underway. Jacob's mind raced. He knew Leslie's history, her sterling reputation as a healer, her decades of service. Yet he could not ignore the evidence Kat had uncovered: the crashed sedan, forensic reports of brake tampering, lab analyses showing elevated potassium levels inconsistent with routine treatment. Somewhere in the nexus of professional rivalry, personal betrayal, and medical subterfuge lay the truth. He stood at last, cell phone pressed to his ear. "Dispatch, I need every available unit in the area. We have a suspect who fled on foot from a private residence. Name's Leslie Thomas. She may be armed." Kat's gasp cut through the radio static. Jacob added into the phone, "Notify the hospital. She's likely to try to steal medical supplies or forge records." As dawn crept across the sky, police cars combed city streets, alleys, and even the nearby waterfront. Every lead, every citizen report, was funneled into the hunt. Meanwhile, Jacob stayed at Ted's side in the Richardson foyer, refusing calls to leave. "I promised your mother I'd look out for you," he murmured, pressing ice to Ted's cheek. "I won't let her do more harm." By mid-morning, Kat had pieced together a map of Leslie's possible routes. The shortest path from the Richardsons' estate to her home passed through a construction site with half-built condos, ideal for someone wishing to vanish. Jacob and Kat drove there in an unmarked car, engines off, scanning the skeletal framework for movement. Inside one of the unfinished buildings, Leslie crouched in a darkened corner, breathing hard. Her white coat, once crisp and immaculate, was crumpled and stained. She clutched a satchel of medical records, a failsafe she believed would exonerate her by proving Laura's underlying condition had been misdiagnosed. But Kat's accusations had seared the lies from her memory. Now, faced with potential arrest and disgrace, Leslie's mind oscillated between vindication and panic. Suddenly, footsteps scraped the gravel outside. Kat clicked off the engine's ignition and exchanged a look with Jacob. He placed an open hand at his side, a signal to Kat that he would arrest Leslie if she made a move. Kat's heart pounded. Despite her certainty, part of her recoiled at the thought of seeing Leslie in cuffs. A figure emerged from the shadows. Leslie, head lowered, coat pulled tight. Her eyes widened at the sight of them. "Stop," Jacob commanded, stepping forward. Leslie froze, tears pooling in her eyes. I didn't mean," she stammered. But she stopped short, realizing that words would not forestall the consequences she had set in motion. Jacob moved in, cuffs glinting in the morning light. Kat felt an unexpected pang of sorrow. Leslie, who had once been a mentor to her, a friend to her family, was now reduced to a suspect. Yet justice and Laura's life demanded no less. As Jacob led Leslie toward his car, Kat lingered behind, gaze fixed on the half-built condos. She wondered what cracks in Leslie's past had allowed malevolence to seep in. She thought of Laura Peterson, fragile, strong, a young woman whose life had hung by a thread. And of her father, battered but unbroken, his moral compass unwavering even when it tore his world apart. The arrest was the culmination of weeks of tension, Kat's discovery, Ted's agonizing choice, Leslie's panic-driven violence. But for Kat, it marked only the beginning of healing. She would sit by Laura's bedside, give testimony, and watch the scales of justice tilt toward truth. Ted, once hurt by betrayal, would recover physically and, eventually, emotionally, knowing he had protected his daughter and honored his own conscience. In the aftermath, the Richardson household strove to return to normal. Kat resumed her law studies, fueled by the conviction that even in tight-knit communities, dark deeds must face daylight. Ted, his cheek still tender from Leslie's blow, returned to his work at the philanthropic foundation, channeling his grief into programs for accident survivors. And Jacob Hawthorne, battle-worn yet resolute, prepared his case, ready to prove beyond doubt that Leslie Thomas had endangered a life and attacked a friend. But amid these individual journeys, one question lingered: how does a healer become a harbinger of harm? The trials that lay ahead, courtroom dramas, medical ethics reviews, and the slow process of communal forgiveness, would seek to answer that. As for Leslie Thomas, she faced not only legal consequences, but the more profound reckoning of a soul that had strayed from its founding oath, to heal, not to harm. And so, as the sun set on this chapter of their lives, Kat stood at the threshold of her father's restored home, the wind tousling her hair. She lifted her eyes to the horizon, where the future shimmered with possibility. She had won a victory for Laura and for justice, but she knew the healing journey was far from over for them all. Yet if there was one truth etched into her heart, it was this: Even beyond the darkest gates, hope can prevail when courage and integrity light the way. The dawn light filtered through half-closed blinds in the Richardson guest suite, where Ted lay propped on pillows, the bruise across his cheek subsiding into a dark bruise edged with gold. Kat sat at his side, her textbooks abandoned on the nightstand, as she scrawled notes in her journal. The hush between them was not awkward, but contemplative. After all the chaos, they were beginning to face the fallout together. Ted reached for a glass of water on the bedside table. He paused, then spoke gently. "Did Jacob manage to secure a bail hearing for her today?" Kat nodded. "He did. It's this afternoon. Leslie's lawyer is arguing she's not a flight risk yet." Ted exhaled. "Of course she'll say that. She's used to pleading cases from the other side." Kat glanced at him, concern etched in her brow. "Dad, are you okay with how this is moving? I mean, pushing her into court so soon." He met her eyes, that familiar blend of conviction and compassion in his own. "I love her, Kate. But I love you more than I love her. If justice demands distance, I'll step back. But I'll stand firm." Across town, the county courthouse buzzed with activity. Jacob Hawthorne strode down the marble hall, briefcase in hand, eyes fixed on the double doors that led to courtroom 4B. Inside, reporters jockeyed for position. A courthouse photographer snapped shots of Leslie as she was led in, wrists cuffed, her white coat exchanged for a beige smock. She met Jacob's gaze, no words passed, but an unspoken history flickered between them. Childhood holidays, family dinners, shared laughter in a world now shattered. Jacob set his briefcase on the counsel table and arranged his exhibits. The police report documenting Kat's 911 call, Laura Peterson's medical records highlighting the irregular potassium spike, and the testimonial affidavit from the ICU nurse who'd met with Leslie under dim lights in that parking garage. He watched Leslie's defense counsel whisper urgent prompts, denials rehearsed, explanations ready. But Jacob's focus was on one face, Leslie's. Beneath the weary veneer, he searched for truth. When the bail hearing began, the judge's gavel fell with practiced finality. The prosecution spoke first. Leslie Thomas had violently assaulted a community leader, warranted psychiatric evaluation after exhibiting clear signs of panic-driven aggression, and faced credible evidence linking her to attempted medical sabotage. The defense countered with Leslie's impeccable record, 2 decades of service, unblemished patient reviews, dozens of testimonials from families she'd helped. For every shred of procedural audit against Leslie, her lawyer presented character references, charity drives she'd organized, scholarships she'd funded, lives she'd saved. Kat sat in the gallery beside Laura's aunt, clutching her notebook as if it could shield her from the tension. Ted watched from the front row, chest tightening. When the judge finally ruled, denying bail due to flight risk and potential danger to others, Kat's gasp echoed in the hushed chamber. Leslie's shoulders sagged, tears pooling in her eyes, but she spoke only one word under her breath, "Dad." In the days that followed, the Richardson home felt strangely empty without Kat spilling in at dawn, chattering about case law. Ted's foundation work ground on, he championed a new initiative to support victims of medical malpractice, his speech postponed then brought forward to capitalize on the public's attention. Balancing empathy for Laura with the need for systemic reform, he stood behind a podium at City Hall, flanked by Laura's currently stable but fragile form in a wheelchair. As he spoke of accountability, his fingers itched for Leslie's presence, but he reminded himself he was there for the injured, not the accused. Kat, meanwhile, split her time between the courthouse and her daughter's bedside. Laura, once barely conscious, was now whispering stories of hospital gowns and 4 drips, the fevered dreams that had haunted her nights, the nurses who had held her hand when pain racked her body. Kat listened, digesting every detail. One afternoon, Laura mentioned a comforting presence, a woman in white who hummed an old lullaby as she adjusted the drip. Leslie, Kat realized, voice catching. It was her. Laura's eyes grew distant. She saved me, at first. The complexity of Laura's memory unsettled Kat. If Leslie had cared for her in those desperate hours, could she truly have maliciously tampered with the infusion? Kat's conviction buckled under this new insight. She brought her concerns to Jacob over coffee in the courthouse cafe, sliding the nurse's affidavit across the table. It suggests Leslie stepped in when no one else would, Kat said. Maybe she fixed a mistake. Maybe the sabotage was someone else entirely. Jacob frowned. If there's reasonable doubt, we're compelled to follow it. I'll order a forensic review of the supply chain logs. His phone buzzed, a text from Ted. Lunch. Kat glanced at the clock. It was their only chance to connect outside the hospital. I'll meet him, she told Jacob. Be back soon. At a nearby bistro, Ted stirred his soup absent-mindedly as Kat slid into the booth across from him. You look tired, he said. She offered a wan smile. Exhausted. She reached across the table, placing her hand on his. Dad, there are holes in this case. Laura remembered Leslie saving her, maybe correcting the dose. And that ICU nurse, she said someone else pressured her to sign off. Ted's fork clattered onto his plate. So Leslie's innocent? His voice was soft, nearly hopeful. I don't know yet, Kat admitted. But I need to find out the truth before it's too late. He nodded, pride and pain mingling in his gaze. Whatever you need, Kate. They clasped hands, father and daughter united, even as the very foundations of their beliefs trembled. That afternoon, Jacob paced the forensics lab, awaiting the detailed logs. A technician finally appeared, clipboard in hand. We traced the digital signature for the prescription order, she began. It points to a midnight access from Dr. Marcus Wells's personal terminal, Leslie's former mentor. Jacob's eyes narrowed. So Marcus had motive and opportunity. The technician nodded. We also found an encrypted note referencing accelerated recovery. It's obscure, but it correlates with the timestamp of Laura's injection. Jacob exhaled, adrenaline surging. This could be the break we need. He called Kat, instructing her to secure a warrant for Wells's records. As he hung up, he sensed Leslie's absence more poignantly than ever. Was she in jail cell despairing or wandering free, intent on clearing her name? Either way, he vowed to reconcile justice with loyalty. In her small, windowless cell, Leslie sat on the edge of the cot, head in her hands. The day's bail hearing replayed in her mind, Kat's tear-stained face, Ted's pained expression, the judge's verdict. She touched the bruised knuckle where she'd struck Ted, a gesture both of regret and self-defense. Beyond the cell door, muffled voices and rattling keys underscored her isolation. A guard slid a meal tray under the door. Leslie sat, studying the meager portion, a sandwich, fruit, a wrapped cookie. She hadn't felt hunger since her arrest, but she forced herself to eat. Recalling the nurse's affidavit and Jacob's revelation about Marcus Wells, she resolved that if she ever won her freedom, she would expose the real saboteur. For her own redemption and for Laura's survival. That evening, Ted visited Laura in her hospital room. She lay back, pale but alert, her eyes bright with unspoken questions. I heard you remembered, he began. Laura sat up on one elbow. It was blurry, she admitted. But I heard humming. I felt hands steadying the line. I thought it was Leslie, you. Ted's heart tightened. I don't know yet. But your memory led us to Marcus Wells. We think he manipulated the records and maybe poisoned you for profit. Laura's eyes widened. So it wasn't Leslie? Ted squeezed her hand. We'll prove it. I promise. 2 days later, Jacob stood before a packed courtroom with Marcus Wells on the witness stand. The defense attorney grilled him. You deny ever accessing Leslie's login credentials? Wells's lips trembled. I only borrowed her password to order supplies for an emergency. I swear. Jacob rose for cross-examination. You admitted to financial difficulties. Did you ever contemplate discrediting Dr. Thomas to gain control of the clinic? Wells's composure cracked. I needed the big contract. She was the only barrier. A hush fell. Jacob held up the encrypted note, letting the courtroom read accelerated recovery, a term Wells had used in his logs. You plotted to make Laura's recovery intentionally slow, so you could pose as the savior and steal business. Wells's shoulders slumped. I didn't mean to harm her, only to embarrass Leslie. As murmurs rose, Jacob knew they had the confession needed. In that moment, justice, though delayed, was within grasp. Outside the courthouse, Kat and Ted embraced. The weight of false accusations lifted, yet the path to real healing stretched ahead. Leslie's name would be cleared, but trust, once broken, would take time to mend. Kat whispered to her father, "You did the right thing." Ted nodded, tears in his eyes. We all did. In the days to come, Leslie would be released, her reputation scarred, but her integrity intact. She would return, tentatively, to her medical duties, guided by the knowledge that even those sworn to heal can be wounded by betrayal. Ted and Kat would nurture new bonds with Laura, transforming tragedy into community advocacy. And Jacob, ever the arbiter between law and family, would carry forward the lesson that justice must be tempered by compassion. So closed this chapter of lives intertwined by love, fear, and the frailty of human intention. Yet, as the late afternoon sun waned, they all stepped into their futures, aware that beyond each gate, of courthouse, of deference, of guilt, lay the possibility of redemption.